Hello and welcome. This is Svetlana. Today I'm participating in Altenew Summer Fun Video Hop, celebrating the new July 2020 release. I encourage you to check out other participants of this hop to see amazing projects they created. Also, as usual, Altenew is giving away prizes at each stop of the video hop. You can find the video hop list and all details in the video description. In today's video, I will be sharing a monochromatic floral card featuring watercoloring on non-white cardstock. I will also share a couple of tips and tricks along the way. I will be working with the new Coraggio stamp set. This set has a very beautiful large floral image as well as several nice sentiments. First, I will be white embossing this beautiful floral image onto a pink cardstock panel. This is just a regular 110-pound cardstock, which isn't quite meant for watercoloring. But I still will make it work and will show you that you don't need to be limited with just watercolor paper when you do watercoloring. But first, I need to take care of another problem. Since this stamp is rather large, it doesn't really fit into my mini MISTI, in the spot where I want to locate it. I could push the panel towards the middle of the MISTI to fit the stamp in and use the magnet to secure the panel in place. But I don't trust the magnet alone. The MISTI base corner is better trustee when it comes to this matter. I have one trick that I use in cases like this. I cut two stripes of a thick cardboard and place them into the MISTI corner. This way I kind of created another corner which secured the panel in place, allowing at the same time to place the stamp flat. Next, I will be moving to heat embossing. First, I'm prepping the panel by applying baby powder with a dry fluffy brush. This will reduce the static and prevent embossing powder particles from sticking in the areas where I don't want them to be. Now I'm inking up the stamp with Altenew embossing ink, closing the MISTI lid and pressing onto it to stamp the image. Here you want to press very well along the whole surface of the stamp. First of all, the stamp is large and in any case it requires good pressure while being stamped. But also this DIY corner may be a bit thicker than the cardstock and may need additional work along its edges. After stamping, I am proceeding to the regular heat embossing routine. Pouring Altenew Pro White embossing powder onto the stamp impression and heat setting it with my heat gun. In one area, I didn't get good enough embossing, so I will be restamping and re-embossing this spot. Thanks to the MISTI and the cardboard corner, I can stamp the second time exactly onto the same spot. Now it's time to start coloring. I will be using Altenew watercolor brush markers in Ruby Red and Rouge. Also, I will be using a water brush with clean water. I'm working one petal at a time and I'm coloring them in the following manner. First, I'm coloring with the Ruby Red marker in the base part of a petal. Then, I'm blending it out with the Rouge marker somewhere to the middle of the petal or so. Next, I'm blending out the color with just clear water. Finally, to kind of finish off the petal, I'm adding a bit more Ruby Red along the tip of the petal, its edges, and this, for the lack of better word, creases. And then I'm blending it out with clear water. I'm continuing doing all the same for all other petals. Usually you won't be coloring onto a non-watercolor paper with a watercolor medium, as it cannot absorb much water without getting warped or even damaged. Also, watercolor medium doesn't work as good on a regular cardstock. But in case of these watercolor markers, the situation is a bit forgiving. Altenew markers are extremely pigmented and a little bit goes a long way. Also, the liquid watercolor flows perfectly out of them. So, there is no need to squeeze the markers, risking to add too much water. Basically, the amount of liquid got onto the cardstock is minimal, and it prevents the cardstock from warping. I recommend working one petal at a time to blend out each layer while it's still wet. As if it dries, you will need more water to blend it out, and again, we don't want to deal with a lot of water in this case. While the watercolor is still wet and sits on the cardstock surface, it's easier to pull it out to blend. After drying, it will absorb into the cardstock core, and it will require additional water to get it moving. Okay, after I finished coloring the flowers, I'm proceeding to coloring the leaves, which I will color in red as well, since I'm making a monochromatic card. To make them a bit different than flowers, I'm using a ruby red marker, which I'm blending out with the rouge one. I'm not using a clear water here, which makes the leaves a bit darker than flowers. After I finished coloring and let the panel dry, now I will be adding some splatters onto it. Splatters is always a good idea in general. They add character and interest, but also they cover all imperfections, which especially may be needed if you watercolor it onto not appropriate, so to speak, cardstock. I'm using Altenew stamping mat to protect my working surface. First, I'm squeezing a little bit of liquid watercolor out of the ruby red marker, then dipping it into these droplets and shaking above the panel. And I'm also adding the pure white ink spray splatters using a small brush. The main part of the card is ready. I just need to finish it off. First, I need to add a sentiment. I have a box of different sentiments left from another project. I'm going through them now, selecting which type I would like to add to the card. The sentiment wording doesn't matter on this point, I'm just looking on the style. Finally, I selected a stamped in red onto a white strip, which I will be stamping using a sentiment from the same stamp set. Now you see me going through all my white cardstock leftovers, choosing the right size for the sentiment. I finally made my choice and proceed to stamping the sentiment using the ruby red dye ink. I trimmed the panel to the 3 3/4 and 5 inches, and next I will be for mounting it onto a white card base. I applied 4 stripes of adhesive foam along the panel edges and peeled the backing from each of them in such a way that the left top and right bottom corners of the panel have exposed adhesive. Those pieces, or tails, if you will, of adhesive backing also work as some kind of springs, allowing me to align the panel along the card base edges without adhesive touching it. Once I've decided on the position, I'm pressing it down and adhering those corners. Now I'm peeling off all the backing to adhere the panel completely. Next, I'm popping up the sentiment using my T-ruler to align it. Lastly, I need to add some small embellishments. I've chosen white crystals for this important role. Once I decided on their position, I will be adhering them using Ranger Multimedia Matte Adhesive, which I squeezed onto a scrap piece of plastic. I will be using a disposable micro applicator to apply the adhesive, although I'm not really dispose them right away. I save them and use many times until they totally stop working. To adhere each crystal, I'm pushing it aside a bit, applying the adhesive, and then picking the crystal up with a drawer picker and place it onto the adhesive dot. And that's basically it. I hope you like the card and technique I shared today. All supplies will be listed in the video description. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to ask them in the comment area. And don't forget to check out other steps on the Altenew video hub. Have a wonderful day. Bye.